Hi there, Jeremy O'Carroll, Director of the Fitzroy Learning Centres here. The Fitzroy Method Advanced program is designed for anyone working with students in grades 3 through to 6, and it will be focusing on the Fitzroy Method higher reading levels, so that is readers 21 through to 60, and what we'll be doing is showing you how to effectively teach all of the materials found both in the readers and the Fitzroy Method workbooks. Now, these higher levels can be quite challenging because a lot of new information is taught. If you've seen the readers, you'll know that once you get to reader 60, it's only a very small jump to be able to then read other fictional works like Harry Potter, for instance. And so it's actually quite challenging there, and a lot of the words students will come across are long, and in many cases we introduce quite a few special words. And so to teach these effectively, you're going to have to employ quite a few different strategies to firstly help kids memorize the words and then help them to be able to understand and comprehend everything they learn. So in this advanced program, what we're going to be doing is running you through everything that we teach at Fitzroy Community School, the school in which this whole program was developed, and we'll be showing you these kind of advanced learning skills that they teach there, which enable students to get these amazing results I've been getting in recent years. Now, we'll be starting, as I said, looking at the higher Fitzroy reader levels, and there you'll see that a lot of grammar is introduced. So we'll be teaching you ways to help kids memorize, for instance, difficult terms like superlatives. How do you get a child to remember a word like superlative? Well, we'll teach you memory skills. How do you get children to remember things like the possessive apostrophe? Well, we've got different techniques which we've developed in the classroom over the last 30 plus years, and so we'll be sharing with you all the wisdom we've gained in the classroom. So everything here has been field tested. And we'll also be showing you in this first section some of the supplementary materials to the Fitzroy Method program. So things like the alphabetics game, which is a word forming game, and also the Fitzroy Method software. So that's the software for the computer, which is very useful for all sorts of students, be they struggling students or students who are actually quite advanced. In the next section, what we're looking at is creative writing. You'll see in the higher level workbook, we have a lot of creative writing exercises, but there isn't necessarily a lot of supplementary material in the Fitzroy Method to explain how we go about teaching those. We give exercises, but we don't necessarily give you a lot of information on the most effective way to teach creative writing. Well, that is exactly what we're going to do in this section. And what my experience has told me over the years is this is really critical, because most teachers in primary school are given the job of teaching creative writing without ever having studied the art themselves. So it can become very challenging. They're pretty well just expected to know how to teach creative writing because they can read, because maybe they can analyze novels, for instance, but creative writing is a very different skill. And that's why if you sort of think back to your years at maybe primary school or high school, or sometimes even higher levels, university, if you wrote a creative piece, then typically the response of the teacher would be kind of vague. Particularly, I remember this from high school, where you'd write a piece and they'd come back with something like, "That was a really good effort," or "I think you could try a little bit harder, Jeremy." And that was fine. It might have been true what they said, but it wasn't really helpful in getting me to write more effectively. And so what I'll be doing in this section is showing you many, many different techniques to always be able to improve anything your students write. So you'll always have a very concrete technique to say, look, I think you can do this, this, and this to really improve their technique. So I'll be teaching things like, how do you incorporate the 5 senses in your writing to really create a sort of almost like a stereo effect, a very rich effect with your language? How do you create kind of extra tension and drama by knowing the difference between when you should show an event and when you should tell an event? I'll be talking about things like, how do you use dialogue effectively? You know, what's the best way to create natural but snappy, vivacious, alive dialogue? And so I'll run you through a whole series of steps so that, as I said, anytime a student hands in some work, you are going to have many, many things, very concrete ideas on how they can improve it. And in fact, you're going to have so many ideas that you wouldn't ever give the student all those ideas at once. Rather, what you're going to do is every time they hand in a piece, you'll suggest a couple of ways they can improve it, and then the next time they hand in a piece, you'll suggest a couple of different ways they can improve it, and bit by bit, over the years, they'll slowly integrate all this wisdom and knowledge you're teaching them about the art of creative writing. And what you're going to find is that although many of these techniques are often taught in higher levels, for instance, sometimes these might be taught in, say, creative writing courses at university, the beauty of them is that students, even 10-year-olds, can readily understand the concepts. So they're easy to teach, and then the students can have a lot of fun with them. After the creative writing section, I'll be talking to you about planning. Now, planning is an art which is not often taught too well. In fact, I recall days when I taught at Melbourne University and I was taking first year literature, and many of the students there, when I got their essays, obviously had no idea how to plan an essay. And it's simply because they're not taught properly either at primary school or high school. And so what I'll be doing in this section is teaching you firstly how to get students to generate ideas for an essay or a presentation. You know, how do they brainstorm ideas? Then what I'll show you how to do is how do you get them to kind of filter them for relevancy, because a big issue young children often have is they have all these exciting ideas, but they're often not answering the question. They're often not relevant to the topic they're talking about. So maybe they're talking about the football, but on the weekend they went to an amusement park, and so they can't resist putting in that information about the amusement park. So how do you get them to learn what bits of information they should include and what bits of information they should leave out? So I'll be talking about that. Then, once they've generated all these ideas, once they've kind of sorted it for the best ideas, the irrelevant ideas, how do they piece it together in a coherent whole? And I'll be showing you how you do that. Now, in this section, we'll be working particularly with mind maps. Now, you've probably come across mind maps, but here's the thing I've learned over the years. There's a big difference between having a basic understanding of mind maps and learning how to use mind maps truly effectively, because the beautiful thing about a mind map is when done correctly, it helps you sync both hemispheres of the brain, so you create a kind of a whole brain thinking, and that's the beauty of it. It's using both left brain logical kind of linear thinking, the kind we normally associate with note-taking, with right-brained activity, the type which we often use images and colours and things like that. So by combining the two, we manage to sync both hemispheres of the brain, create this whole brain thinking, and that takes students' thinking up to a whole new level. And so you find that not only the kids enjoy planning so much more, I mean, I've had students who are generally not that interested in academic things go home and in their own spare time actually build mind maps because they're so much fun. So you'll find not only do they enjoy it, but they start to become much more effective at planning. Then in the final section, what I'm going to do is show you how to get students to really present effectively. So that might be public presentations, speeches, etc. So we've taught them how to plan for them. How do they then present themselves well? So this will involve a couple of skills. Firstly, they need to know how to communicate effectively with an audience. But another thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how they can actually learn to memorize everything they're saying. So at first, when kids give a presentation, usually they're kind of hiding behind their notes like this, and they're reading from them. But what we teach is a way where they can bit by bit reduce the amount of notes they use until ultimately they don't use any notes at all. And when they do this, they'll be using a particular memory technique which we teach. And the beautiful thing about this technique is you can remember a whole sequence of key points even when you're on stage and totally nervous, even when your mind goes totally blank and you're up there and you're thinking, I can't for the life of me remember what I needed to talk about. Well, you can use these memory techniques, these kind of memory hooks which you'll be learning. They can go back to these and suddenly they'll, yes, I know what I need to talk about. And then once they've talked about one particular point, maybe their mind's totally blank again. But when they get to it, they go, okay, let's look at my next memory hook which they've created, and they'll again remember what they need to talk about. So what you're going to find is in this advanced course, you're actually going to learn a lot of great advanced learning skills which you yourself will find interesting. And that's why teachers who go through this program enjoy it so much, because not only are they getting skills that they can teach their students, they're getting skills which are actually useful and fascinating for themselves. And so I've always found that, as I say, teachers who go through this program get so much out of it, and that's why it's so exciting to teach it. So hopefully I'll see you along at a course. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. And if you do, as I say, it'll really enable you to teach the higher Fitzroy reader levels and all the workbook materials at a much more effective level. So hope to see you there. Thank you.